What's the smartest way to get started with AI in your business? And why are so many companies still getting it wrong? Well, in today's episode, I'm joined by John Adam, Chief Revenue Officer at Aimprosoft. And together, we're going to unpack a more pragmatic approach to AI adoption. And we're going to do that by focusing less on the hype and more on measurable results. So if you find yourself overwhelmed by some of those grand AI visions or unsure on how to move beyond those endless pilots, today's conversation is aimed at giving you some clarity. And John is going to share how Aimprosoft is helping organisations identify low complexity, high impact use cases that demonstrate value quickly. And with a track record of long-term client partnerships and real-world success stories, including work with FTSE 100 companies, not to mention fast-growing startups, I want to learn more about how the company is a bridge between strategy and execution. I will also explore some of the tougher questions faced in the industry right now, such as where does AI still struggle? We hear all the time about what it can do. What can it not do? And what ethical concerns should leaders be addressing? And how can you customize AI systems to avoid just generic average outputs that just dilute your brand or introduce bias? Nobody wants to see more AI slop introduced. So whether you are leading a digital transformation or just trying to get a grips on what practical AI implementation really looks like, then I'm hoping you're going to find a lot to take away from today's episode. But enough for me. Time for me to introduce you to today's guest. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. So, yes, thank you for having me. My name is John. I'm the CRO, that's Chief Revenue Officer of Aimprosoft. We're a tech consultancy. So basically, our role is to help our partners get to the most effective technology solution to somewhere where they want to be. So either solving an inefficiency or a business opportunity. And we'll sit with them and design, keeping in mind the business priorities and all the rest of the context. What's the most effective technology solution to get to where they want to get to? And we'll do that in a couple of ways, either purely on a consultative basis, or we can also execute on their behalf as well if in-house resources are lacking to then build out what we've come up with together.
And a question I've got to ask, I'm fascinated by people's origin stories. So what would you say originally sparked your interest in the area of software development, AI and consulting for businesses? What was it that led you to Aimprosoft? There's got to be a story there too, right?
Well, I mean, I guess there always is, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always had, let's say, roles which are adjacent to developing software. So I'm getting to be an old man now at the age of 45. So I've worked in a couple of sectors over the years, and my first career, let's say, was in real estate. And as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm originally from Scotland. And as you may also be able to tell from the accent, which is a little bit mixed up these days, I've spent a large part of my adult life living in Eastern Europe, mainly Bulgaria. And my first career in my 20s was in real estate. And one of my first big jobs was as head of sales and marketing for what was at the time the largest real estate development project in the country. And of course, with any job these days, or this is going back to 2005, 2007, 8, there's software involved. So we didn't just build the standard website where you could go and get basic information, as we say in the industry these days, a static website. We added some interactive elements. You could go into the floor plans. You could see which units were available. You could kind of get a 3D view of the floor plan, etc. And at the time, it was relatively sophisticated. So part of my job was working with the company that helped us to build and implement that interactive real estate project. And that was probably my first real contact with software development. And then after that, I had my own startup for several years, which we kicked off in London around 2012, 13. And it was an online media stroke comparison site for retail investors. So it was just after the new rules had been brought in by the Financial Conduct Authority, which meant that the financials advisors that every high street bank used to provide for free to give their clients pension advice and general investment advice, they were no longer allowed to earn commissions on the investments of their clients because of the perceived conflict of interest there. So that business model was completely, the floor was pulled out from underneath it. The banks stopped offering that service. Other, let's say, independent financial advisors that would offer free consultancy, but they make money on the commissions later on the investments, they all had to stop doing that. So our idea was to kind of fill that advice gap through a combination of media, analysis, news, different forms of content, and also that comparison platform, so people could say, okay, what's the best pension provider for me? What's the best stockbroker for me? What's the best trading platform for me? And that was a relatively complex piece of software with a lot going on in the background. And as a co-founder, you wear many different hats, but one of mine was product owner. So I'd work with the team building it, and I'd say what I wanted to get to. They say, okay, from a technology point of view, these are the possibilities, these are the trade-offs. So you pretty much always have trade-offs. It's like, how much is it going to cost? How much time is it going to take versus what's the actual impact? And it's getting that most effective balance between all of the different factors involved. So over a number of years, we were working on that project, and we'd started with a supplier who was building it for us. We'd brought it in-house. We'd worked with a supplier again after that, because it was about 5 to 6 years altogether. So I got quite an insight into let's say, the different models that are available building software. And after we sold that company in 2017, I spent a couple of years consulting, mainly in go-to-market area, companies in different sectors, helping them with their sales and marketing mostly. And one of my clients during that period was a German software development outsourcing company. So that kind of brought me back into that world again. And I worked with them as a consultant for a little over a year. And at one stage, they offered me a permanent position with the company. So that's kind of what brought me into the sector. And I found that I really enjoyed the sector. I found the different technologies, and the business side as well, because it's always marrying the technological options with the business priorities and that kind of strategy side to it. I very much enjoy that combination. So I've been in the sector now for 6, must be coming on 7 years now, and very much enjoy it.
What a great story, and a journey that's taken you from Scotland to London to Bulgaria, become a co-founder, retail, software, so much in between as well. And that path did eventually lead you to Aimprosoft. So for people hearing about it for the first time, what's the core mission of Aimprosoft, and what are the key problems that you're aiming to solve for companies in this all-in-one consultancy? Is the key to help ambitious organisations and their teams do more with less, or is it something else? Tell me more about that mission.
I think in business, that it always boils down to that, doesn't it? Being able to do more with less. The companies which are most successful, they find a way to use more effective use of their resources. So yeah, that's definitely what we do when it comes to the technology and software development side of things. And especially as AI has now come into the picture over the last couple of years, there's a new twist to being able to do more with less. There's a whole new Pandora's box which is opened up, and acting quickly and being proactive here, while also being necessarily a little bit cautious and weighing things up and deciding what's let's say the best route to starting to get gains from leveraging AI without potentially compromising other sides of the business and taking things away. That's a big part of what we do. But if we take a step back and look at it from a slightly higher view, I mentioned at the introduction that our role is essentially to work with our partners to help them get from A to B in terms of the most effective technology solution for their circumstances to reach a particular goal, whether that's a cost efficiency or whether that's opening up new value through adding new products or features for their clients, the people who use their products or services. And different companies have different setups. So some companies, they have their own IT department. They tend to prefer to build things in-house. We work with them either as a consultant or sometimes as project cycles move. There's different requirements in terms of what specializations are needed and what skills are needed. So we might be able to supplement particular skills or provide specialists for a number of months rather than the 2, 3, 4 years plus that companies need to see ahead if they're going to make that in-house hire. Other companies, they have limited or they have no technology capacity in-house, but almost every business these days involves software. So whether that's integrating pre-made systems, platforms, customizing them, or whether it's building software from scratch, that's also something that we work with companies on. And at the core of what we do is always looking at what's the simplest effective route from A to Z in terms of the technology solution. A lot of the time companies try to overcomplicate technology, and they might have big ambitious projects that are not necessarily or are overly complicated to what the need is. So sometimes our role is to actually scale our partners back and say, look, you could do this. It would be ambitious. It would be big. But if it goes wrong, it's going to be expensive. So maybe let's slow down a little bit here. Let's do something cheaper and simpler to validate the idea or the goal of this big system. Let's put it into milestones once we start getting evidence back from the market or from your internal processes. This is definitely the way to go. Then we can make it more complicated, but it's always a lot harder to simplify something that's been done overcomplicated to start with than it is to then add a bit more depth and complexity into something which is a simple, effective solution.
Yeah, 100% with you. And as you said there's many business leaders at the moment, they are extremely cautious, weighing things up. They want to leverage AI, but without introducing unnecessary risk into other areas of the business. But that buzz that surrounds AI is not going anywhere. But I'm curious, from what you're seeing and hearing out there, what are real entrepreneurs and businesses actually using it for in the wild? Those that are out there, early adopters that are making the most of this, what kind of value are they unlocking? What are they using it for?
Well, I mean, there's a huge range, and I think that's inevitable, because if you implement AI smartly, and the same way as implementing any kind of software, so whether we're talking about AI or we're talking about more, let's say, the legacy technologies that would be used to build the software that we've all been familiar with working with over the last, how long is it now, 20 to 30 years. Basically, as I was coming into university, the software age was well and truly dawning. So the same one for companies, it's all about getting that balance right between either unlocking value in the sense of growth value, unlocking efficiencies, but doing that in a way which doesn't break things which are already working, which is smoothly integrated, which isn't overcomplicated, and doesn't lock the company in as well. So I think, especially with AI, it's always been the case with any kind of technology, but one of the biggest mistakes that companies make is locking themselves into a particular technology, whether it's a software that they use, whether it's a platform that they use, whether it's a data structure, whatever it is. But you always want to make sure that you have flexibility, because things change, technologies change, and needs change. And with AI, that's all been accelerated. So I think the companies are doing a lot of different things. The more complicated, ambitious projects are starting to hit issues, I would say, from what we've seen, because they are maybe overly ambitious. They're trying to do things which maybe the technology is not quite there for yet in terms of doing it as well as humans would. And the problem is that you'll have a lot of cases, maybe 90% plus, where everything will be fine, but it's those edge cases that AI still struggles to deal with. So what the smart companies are doing, they're looking for those low complexity, high impact processes, often around the periphery of the core business. So you're not getting stuck right into core processes, core systems yet. And those will be things like being able to pick data out of siloed databases. So you need to make a calculation, need something from here, something from there, somewhere from the other place. You can now quite easily build an agent which is able to take from those different places in a much more efficient way than bringing them all together, depending on the circumstances. Customer service is an area that a lot of companies have started to experiment with AI in. It can be very effective as long as what the response is very much informational based and fact based. When you start getting into gray areas, anything that needs a little bit of intuition or emotional intelligence, that's where AI falls down. But anything which is rules based needs access to data, and it's repeating processes without an error. That's where AI comes into its own. So we've done a lot of things internally in our company, because if you're going to walk the walk, if you're going to talk the talk, you need to walk the walk as well. So a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago now, we started playing around with our internal processes and thinking, okay, where can we add automation? Where can we add AI? And one thing which is important for people to have in mind is that with this whole wave of AI that's come through over especially the last 6 months, it's kind of mushroomed again after a little bit of a period of bubbling along. And we have a lot of companies coming to us saying, we'd love to do this thing. So for example, one example is an interior design studio. They make money in two ways. One is by doing interior design. The other is by acting almost as a procurement agent. So giving the pieces of furniture and all the other bits and pieces that are involved in creating a hotel lobby or an office building. And what they wanted to do was to match items from their catalog through to a purchasing process that would be largely automated. And what they wanted to do actually didn't need AI involved in it. It was relatively simple automation. But the AI hype got them thinking about what things suck up time in their business in a way which doesn't really add much value but is inefficient. And they came to us, and in the end, they're not going to use AI for it because they don't need to use AI for it, but they will have a much more efficient system. So I think this is one positive of this. It's gotten a lot of companies thinking about, what are we doing which is inefficient? What could potentially be automated? And and just to go back after my ramble, the ones which are doing it smartly, they're looking for those processes which are time intensive, but they are based on repeat processes, they're based on hard and fast rules, and it's very important that errors are not made. So in the wild, if we go back to that, in financial services, things like banks or any other financial services provider, being able to check through all the documentation that they need to gather for know your client regulation, anti-money laundering, all those kind of areas where it's a case of gathering a bunch of documents, it's going through them, it's making sure everything is in order. AI is very, very good at that. Anything which is connected to finance and looking at data, you can already use different tools, either custom built or you already have things on the market where you can plug all your different spreadsheets from different software, different sources into one central hub. And then you can use like a ChatGPT face, a large language model. You can just say things like, how many clients do we have from this particular sector between 2021 and 2025? What's the average value of those clients? So that's another thing another way that I've seen companies using AI intelligently, and actually something that we've helped a number of companies build out. So there's all sorts of little examples, but it's sitting down and saying, okay, where do we feel we spend a lot of time, a lot of money? Is it rules based? Is it a standard process that doesn't involve a lot of edge cases? Those are the types of things that are having the biggest impact at the moment and what companies are already doing.
And for any business leader listening, maybe they have been guilty of being a little overcautious when it comes to AI and automation, and they've not adopted yet, or maybe just in the very early stages of the process. Any advice that you'd pass on to those business leaders on how they can better catch up?
I mean, I think the good news is that it's far from being too late. So I mean, if you're really in deep tech and you're building on the foundational models and so on, you'd be behind if you were starting now. But if you're a business that has its day-to-day processes, a model that's worked for years, and you're just looking for those areas where you can gain efficiency or unlock new interesting opportunities and value for your clients, then it's still early doors. It's very important to start driving adoption. So getting people inside of the company to start playing with different AI tools and across all departments in HR, in finance, in operations, in software development. That's one of the things that we focused on as a software development company. So we've built in AI tools all across our software development process, which makes it a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient. And we're also helping our clients do that as well. So these are software projects that they were building anyway, or they were going to start building anyway. They're not necessarily AI projects, but you can now use from prototyping to design to building code. That's one of the things that the large language models are best at least in terms of the kind of generic boilerplate type pieces of code, which are not overly complex. Testing is one area which is very, very efficient. We've just helped a FTSE 100 company implement automated testing, which has massively increased their coverage and cut their costs by about 60%. So that's something which can very quickly drive return on investment. And I think for companies at the moment, there are two things which are maybe most important. One is getting people used to AI tools, understanding what's available in their departments, in their different roles, starting to play with them. But at the same time, companies, one thing that they can do before any of that is to start getting their data in order. So any AI that they're going to use in the future, integration will be a lot faster, a lot more effective if the data is set up for it to be plugged into and draw from. So data strategy is one thing that everybody should be doing right now, no matter where they are in the AI transformation. And yeah, going back to people start pilot projects, look for the low hanging fruit, things which there's not a lot that can go wrong. It's low complexity, but high impact. So look things like automating testing on software, things like automating know your client bureaucracy, those areas where it's quite expensive to do those things. They're rules based and AI is quite good at them. Start trying to build frameworks there. And I think frameworks is one of the most important things to talk about, because you have a lot of companies where a lot of people are being proactive. They are looking at different tools, but no one knows who's doing what. And there's a lack of observability and there's a lack of measurability. And measurability and observability are very important for businesses because you need them to build investment cases. So companies starting with those pilot projects, targeting the low-hanging fruit, they need to use those to measure and demonstrate ROI so that they can then sell in and up the company further AI transformation. So I think not rushing too much, not trying to do things which are overly complicated, not trying to be too ambitious, but just building that habituation, that awareness, the habits within the team, getting people to start learning these things, to start building their own muscle memory, using tools, getting involved, and at the same time being strategic about it and building those frameworks so that you know that people are not using tools that are sucking data out into large language models when it shouldn't be. They're not doing anything which could potentially be an issue for the company because they've used tools in the wrong way or they've given access to data which should be private. So getting all those things set up. And that's one of the main things that we're working with companies at the moment, just getting those frameworks and strategies in place. And maybe the biggest piece of advice around all of that is do things in a modular way. Don't lock yourself into anything. Don't rely on any one thing. Whether it's you build your own software, you build different systems, don't rely on just OpenAI, for example. Make sure you can always switch in and out different providers. You don't know if the European Union is going to hammer someone for having stolen half of the internet to train their model and put them out of business. You just don't know those things, and things are moving so quickly. So whatever tool is used, whatever system is used, whatever foundational model is used, build it in a way that things can be plugged in and out. As well, because the technology is moving so quickly that we don't know what's going to be possible in 6 months or in 5 years. And the chances are a lot of things are going to be possible that aren't at the moment. So you want to be able to take whatever you've started with, take it and then put something else in, which is maybe better. So making sure that everything is modular, that it can be taken apart and new pieces slotted in without breaking things. There's no reliance on any particular vendor or any particular tool or provider are very important ways to approach it, I think.
100% with you. And a quick scroll down any of our news feeds will reveal lots of information about what AI can do. There'll be lots of exaggerated claims in there. But one of the things that struck me recently is one of the things we don't talk about enough is what AI cannot do. And there are a lot of exaggerated claims, as I said, and a lot of businesses claiming to use AI that aren't AI at all. So what would you say, any big things that you're seeing around what AI just cannot do, and what are some of the most common pitfalls to avoid for any business leaders out there?
I think, again, as has been mentioned, what AI is very good at is things which are rules-based and follow very strict processes. Anything which has a lot of edge cases, AI is not going to be great at that. Anything where humanity is important, AI is not going to be good at that. So anyone who's on LinkedIn or visits websites of companies, you can see the AI content everywhere. You know, it uses particular terms, particular words. There's even the rhythm of how it's written, it comes across as relatively, if you're used to seeing AI content, you can tell.
Yeah.
So I think anything in the sales and marketing space, generally better to avoid it. For me, there's a simple rule. If anyone can do it without a great deal of either expertise or a great deal of budget, they're going to do it. So you're not going to get any competitive advantage from that. So I wouldn't use it for things that you want to demonstrate your company's voice through. I wouldn't use it for things that have a lot of edge cases. Anything where edge cases are relatively minimal, it may not be the best solution. Or at least it should be always have a fallback option. So you take people through an AI system with the understanding that it's not going to work for 20% of them. You have to do it in a way where it's very easy and convenient for the 20%. It's not going to be a nice, ideal solution for them to kind of sedge out of that and get involved with a human. And I think one of the most important things is don't try to do things without a human in the loop most of the time. If it's very rules-based, if it's very database and it's repeat processes, usually that's fine. But everything else, keep a human in the loop, regardless of what it is. I think it's what we can see is that AI elevates the low levels to average. It amplifies expertise. What it's not so good at is that middle bit. So if you have anyone who's not very good at something, using AI will usually bring them up a couple of levels. If you have someone that's already very good at something, AI will allow them to amplify their impact. It will magnify the effect that they can have. And it's that kind of middle level that's probably missing out a little bit more at the moment.
And for yourselves there, in what ways are you leveraging AI, especially to help develop software for companies, your customers and clients there? And what kind of services do you offer in relation to AI? Because I would imagine it's high in demand at the moment. I'm curious what people are coming to you and asking for your help with when it comes to AI.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what we started with was our own core service, which is software development. So early last year, we started looking at various tools, and they've even changed a massive amount since then. But we started building a framework. So we'd look at all the different parts of the software development lifecycle, as we say, through from ideation to prototyping to UI, UX, coding, testing, hosting, and then all the rest of it, documentation, so that if someone leaves the team and someone else comes into the team or a team changes, they have all the information there to make it a smooth transition. So we tested and identified tools for each of those areas. We identified how to benchmark those things, because it's very important. It doesn't make much sense just to say we can do this faster using this tool. That's great. But what's really great is if you can say we can do this amount faster within these circumstances, and you have those benchmarks there. And you also have all those kind of guardrails in place so that code is not being sent out to public large language models, especially if there's anything sensitive around IP there. And just our teams are using them so we can build software more efficiently for our clients. Another thing that we're doing is we're helping, a lot of the time our clients will have their own teams as well. So our teams will either work alongside them or they'll work on different projects. So we're helping to transfer that knowledge in, because that measurability, that observability is something that a lot of companies are struggling with. So we're helping them set those benchmarks, identify the tools which are most appropriate to their circumstances, make sure that those tools fit governance of the particular organization or company in terms of data privacy and other areas of governance that might be important in particular circumstances. So that's one of the main things that we're doing. We're also starting to sit with companies that we work with and identify those low complexity, high impact opportunities that they might have within their company. So it's where do you spend a lot of time that is more routine, not necessarily that much value added, but sucks up resources. Can we automate things there? Sometimes it's with AI. Sometimes it doesn't always need AI, but just getting those pilot projects on the go so that, and then helping companies do it in a way where it's not just doing something, implementing it and it working, but it's building that business case so that managers or CEOs can say, okay, this is what we've done. This is what it cost us within 6 months or 1 year, or sometimes even faster. We expect this is the ROI, which is forecast. Then tracking that impact, tracking the ROI, and then having that business case so that companies can start to be a little bit braver or to expand the areas where they're starting to look at AI implementations.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned ROI there, because there is a huge focus on that right now, and quite rightly so. And for maybe to bring to life everything that we're talking about here, what are some of the coolest or most importantly, the most impressive AI projects that you've been involved with, and what excites you about that, and indeed the future and where we're heading with this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say completely directly, we haven't worked on anything which is massively spectacular. So we haven't built projects which are changing the world. What we have been doing is finding those areas where we can do pilot projects. So I think one of the most interesting ones that we've done, which wasn't hugely complex, it wasn't massively groundbreaking, but we helped within 3 months. We helped a FTSE 100 company with a lot of software assets, websites, etc., massively increase the coverage of their testing, which feeds through directly to the client experience. It was always a struggle for them, and it was always a problem kind of unlocking the budget to do that in a way that they would have liked to have done it. We've allowed them to slash their budget by 60%. And at the same time, increase their coverage significantly, taking it from a little over 50% to up towards 80%. So I think that's really good, because it's exactly that thing that they can then say, we've done this, it was hugely effective, what can we do next? And then start looking for the other opportunities from there. We're working on a pretty interesting project as well, which is bringing data from a lot of different sources from different cloud providers, and using AI to analyze that and always find the best environment to run a particular compute load for a client, which is, again, it's not very sexy. It's not something that's going to make the front page of a newspaper, but from a business perspective, it's hugely valuable for this company. It's already saving them a lot of money. I think within 4 months, it'll already be in positive ROI. So I think those are, we can be proud of those things, even though we're not sending spaceships to the moon yet, or building robots that can go around your house and do all your housework. I'm sure a few years from now we will be working on some of those projects. But yeah, right now it's finding those use cases that can start to support companies and uncovering those opportunities and getting the foundation that they can then move forward from.
And it's such an important point you make there. I think all too often, especially over the last couple of years, we've all been looking at those big sensationalist headlines and the art of the possible and everything in between. And that is one of the reasons, because of being distracted by those shiny headlines, that we've almost, I don't know, lost sight of ROI. So bringing ROI back into the conversation, starting with the problem first and the technology second, that is so important. So thank you for raising that. And something else that we've got to raise as well is the roles around, or the importance of, ethical and responsible AI. So how do you help your clients avoid risks, biases, privacy issues, and roadblocks that often accompany the AI space right now? Because again, this stuff's so important, isn't it? Especially when also trying to allow them to build and develop freely.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the sector. If you're in a regulated sector, it's extremely important if you're using AI to check for issues with bias. So, for example, in financial services, it's very important to run. If you build an AI model that's doing all the bureaucracy, if someone's applying for a loan or any other financial product, you need to look at things like socioeconomic background, ethnicity, disabilities, anything like that. And you have to run all these scenarios through models to make sure that the output of those models is in line with the legal framework, because those models have not been built with that legal framework in mind. So often that means you take the power of a public large language model, but you host it on your own internal server. So, and you build on top of that so that you make sure it's trained in all the, let's say, the anti-bias, the legal frame, and adheres to all the legal frameworks which apply to your business. And then you can start to use it. But especially in regulated industries, it's very important. And in any industry, I think one of the things we've all seen is that, and this is not something which is going to get the company into trouble, but if we see things like using AI for content, using it for customer facing messaging, positioning, it does get quite samey. So if you understand the way that these models work, they start with one token, which is, it's not even a word. It's a consonant or a part of a word. And then based on all of the reams of internet and content it has been trained on, it will predict what's the next most likely token. And then it will go back to the beginning. It will say, okay, with these two tokens in a row, what's the next likely token? And it will build the whole output in that way. And there's transformers make it much more sophisticated in the way I'm explaining it, but that's how it's a predictive model. So predictive models will ultimately be drawn back to the mean. So if they've been trained on the entirety of the internet, the output is generally going to be average. You can adjust that by additional training, by adding in different rules and frameworks, which is what you have to do if you want to get something to a really professional standard. And a lot of companies don't do that. They will just rely on the basic output. And then what they'll find is that they'll be part of a big chunk of their competitors or the world at large, which is producing all different flavors, different shades of the same thing. So I think if you want to really add value, that's something that you have to be aware of, that the large language models, unless they have additional training, unless they're customized with additional frameworks on top of the APIs that come from the big public large language models, you're going to get repeating of the same output. And then we're going to end up in a world which is less colorful, which I don't think anyone wants. And if you're a company, you don't want that either, because you want to be standing out. So I think there's a lot of things which companies have to be aware of from a regulatory, from even an ethical point of view. There are a lot of other things which are maybe not that serious if you look at it from that perspective, but it's just not going to help you. It's you want to do things with AI which will help you stand out, not things which will make you part of the crowd.
Yeah, such good advice there. Thank you for shining a light on that. And do you have any other examples of maybe clients you've worked with that you can share, that, especially if they saw immediate results or ROI working with Aimprosoft? And what does your typical client avatar tend to look like, especially for people listening that may or may not want to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, we're a mid-sized company, so we typically work with other mid-sized companies. I think we pride ourselves very much on the duration of our partnerships, and I think it's over 5 years is the average. But one particular example of a company that I think we've had a good story together and proven our worth is it's a company which is now part of TalkTalk, the telecoms company. When we started working with them almost 15 years ago now, they were a startup building out a wholesale telecom platform and service. And we were with them through two acquisitions, the most recent of which brought them into enterprise level with TalkTalk. So I think that's a particularly successful partnership over many years. So it's less about maybe the immediate ROI, but about long-standing, mutually sustainable, works for both sides partnership that I think after 15 years, we can all say that working together has been extremely beneficial. Another good example is a US company called Cashkick. So they're a platform which allows users to do quizzes, surveys, play games, basically, and get paid for it. Basically, anything a company wants to have, let's say, user feedback or public feedback on, and they're willing to spend something to get that. You can go into that platform and you can earn cash bonuses by helping companies doing their market research or testing a product, etc. And we didn't join that company when they were born. They kicked off in 2016, I believe, and they reached 2021 with the original platform that they built, which was fine for their early needs, but as they started to grow, it couldn't cope. So they needed to bring in a partner to help them rebuild it in a scalable way to help with their future growth. So we rebuilt their product in a scalable way from 2021. And last year they were named by Inc. magazine, the 11th fastest growing company in the USA. So I think that's quite a good example as well.
It really is. Wow. And just for, I don't know, any business leaders listening, maybe they're looking to integrate, strategize, and build with AI in order to remain competitive. Do you think they could risk getting left behind in their respective industries if they don't find ways to incorporate AI elements into their work stack and flow? You said earlier it's not too late, but is there a risk of getting left behind yet?
Look, I mean, I think we can go back 30 years now and say, if you were a company and you ignored the internet,
Yeah.
would you be left behind? I think the answer to that question is fairly obvious. And not necessarily in 1 year, not necessarily in 2 years. What you'll see now, but if you just ignore the internet for the next 10 years, then of course you're going to have to, you may not exist at that point. So I think it's a case of doing it smartly, getting the foundational blocks in place, get your data in order with a good data strategy, get people within your team working with AI tools, look at where you can integrate these things so you can start to build those business cases. Because if you don't do anything in the next 6 months, it depends on your sector, depends on your business, it probably won't be fatal. You can catch up. If you don't do anything in the next year, you've got longer to catch up. If you don't do anything for the next 2 years, you're just making life more difficult for yourself. So I think start quickly. It's like getting fit. You start exercising, you're not going to see an impact after a week. You're not going to see an impact after a month. You're not going to see it after 3 months or very little. But after 6 months, after a year, then you really will see the impact. So I think starting those pilot projects now, getting people used to the mindset, building those business cases and frameworks so that you're doing it in a smart, strategic way, it's obviously going to help. If you go back to the doing more with less, I think the companies which succeed are those that get more out of the same or fewer resources than their competitors. And AI is obviously going to be a huge part of what allows companies to do that going forward. And the faster that leadership start to start to learn what the opportunities are, start to try things out, the faster that they can start to build good habits and testing and all those things within their teams, which will ready the company to be able to take those opportunities which are coming along fast. There are opportunities even now to do things which can save quite a lot of money in another 1, 2, 3 to 5 years. Some of those use cases which are a little bit wilder, a little bit more impressive, will start to be feasible out in the wild. Because now you can see a lot of things which are quite impressive, but they tend to work well in pristine environments, which operating businesses are not, both in terms of there's a lot of people, there's different systems, there's different dependencies, there's a lot of edge cases. But unless you start looking for those simpler solutions now, start getting success with those, you're going to have to start to do that before you go for the more complex stuff, the things which really will maybe change things significantly, allow you to develop products or services which stand out in the market, which in a way which wasn't possible before. And if you don't have those foundational steps in place, then you'll be much less likely to then have those bigger breakthroughs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now.
And I think that is a powerful moment to end on. And we covered so much in our conversation today. So for anyone listening that wants to dig a little bit deeper on anything we talked about, where's the best place to start to find out more information about Aimprosoft, connect with you or your team? Where would you like to point everyone?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious place is to go to our website, which is aimprosoft.com. So anyone can drop me a line on LinkedIn. You can find me under John Alexander Adam, and we'd be more than happy to give you some insights into what we've been working on over the last almost 2 years now, I guess, in the AI space. But we've been on the market for almost 20 years now, building non-AI software, and that's still very much part of what we do. So you can find out a lot about the different types of projects we worked on, the sectors that we've worked in, and some of the goals that we've helped our partners achieve.
And I think that is the big point there, what you've helped your partners achieve. I think there's so much hype around artificial intelligence right now, what it can do, what it will be able to do in the future. But what I've loved talking with you about today is taking a more pragmatic approach. What's the measurable impact? What problems are we solving? What ROI can this technology help us deliver? And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough. And all that washed down with your rich backstory that's took you from Scotland to London to Bulgaria and all the different industries you've worked on. So I will get all the links that you mentioned added to the show notes. But more than anything, just thank you for sitting down with me today and sharing your story.
I appreciate the opportunity.
I think John made clear today that successful AI adoption isn't about flashy demos or chasing trends. It's actually about building systems that solve the right problems at the right scale with the right guardrails in place. And very often that means starting small but meaningful, measuring everything and keeping your long-term architecture flexible enough to evolve as your needs change. But there's also a deeper point here. AI is only as smart as the systems around it, and without good data practices, clear accountability and a willingness to challenge assumptions, I think it's easy to end up with automation that is fast but ultimately flawed. But it doesn't have to be that way. And what's next for your organisation? Are you ready to tackle that low-hanging fruit, start small? Or are you still waiting for a sign to get started? Please let me know your thoughts. Share with me what has been your biggest win or your biggest roadblock on the road to responsible AI adoption. techblogwriteroutlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Keep your messages coming in, and I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. But thank you for listening as always, and I'll speak with you all soon. Bye for now.